And we are back. And welcome again to another informative episode of Inside Out, exploring the roads to redemption. And I'm your host, or actually, you're the co host. I wouldn't be so brave to say I'm the host, but I'm your co host, Dr. Lawrence Henry. I'm the founder and CEO of A Bridge to Light, where we're focused on disrupting the school of prison pipeline and enabling a more seamless reentry for our justice impacted persons into society. And I'm joined by Mr. Thomas Cotton.
Hi, my name is Thomas Cotton. I'm the founder and CEO of Redemption and Advancement Alliance, where our mission is to disrupt the cycles of incarceration by focusing on equipping the most important part of the process, the person. So we work with the person to help them to develop a blueprint for life.
Again, welcome to Inside Out, where we explore the roads to redemption for the justice impacted persons and some of the obstacles that sometimes affect their progress. So at this point in time, we want you to share. Thomas, I think we want them to share. What else we want them to do?
We want them to subscribe, pass it on to their friends, engage, and make sure you hit that notification button so you get all the different shows that we'll have whenever they're premiered, and you'll get the notification. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share. So today we're going to switch up. In our last show, if you haven't seen it, go back to our page and you'll find it there. But I talked about my story. Today we're going to talk about Dr. Lawrence's story. Dr. Lawrence has a unique story. We talked about how in the 80s and the 90s, we grew up listening to the same type of music. We were around similar environments. He's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, and how our paths were kind of similar, and then they broke apart. And so we made some different decisions. So, Dr. Lawrence, tell our listeners, who is Dr. Lawrence Henry and a unique fact about you?
Well, I tell you, I explore that question every day. I explore that question every day when I look in the mirror. Who am I? And it all goes back to I strive to be a brother and friend to society, to humanity, because without that, you are the walking dead. I'm just simply uh, what we will say. I am Joya's son. I'm Joya's son. Uh, like most of us, like you and I did. I went to school in the 70s and 80s. In the 80s, I went to high school, and like you, didn't make so many good choices in high school. I was a high school athlete, but academically, I was not making good choices to the point where when I graduated high school, I didn't have to go to night school. I didn't have to, repeat a grade, but I think that probably hurt me more than helped me.
Mm, I get
I
that.
believe that, the system just pushing me through actually impacted little Larry at the time. Because when I graduated high school with a 1.9,
Mm,
1.9 grade point average, which gave me a platinum invitation, the road from school to prison pipeline. It was
yeah.
a recipe. It was a recipe. And I made a decision. Again, you and I, at very young ages, were forced to make decisions that impacted our lives.
Hmm.
So I decided because I played football and I was okay at it. So I went to a college in Pennsylvania where I had to go through the summer program, like many of us, uh, a summer program so they can reteach you how to write English and to do math. And I did fairly well in that because I was focused, and I went to college and played a little football, played the football, took school a little bit more serious. But I really didn't embrace the academic experience because in a very early stage in my college life, I was introduced to fraternity life. And fraternity life is fun. A lot of things go on. A lot of things go on that probably shouldn't go on, but I was exposed to those things at a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of things that I was exposed to at a very early age, during high school, like you, yes, you and I were exposed to very culturally sound music.
Right.
But during the late 80s, early 90s, along with culturally sound music and conscious rap music and gangster rap music, was the introduction of crack cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my friends, a lot of my good friends, were exposed to that world. I was exposed to that world because of my friendships, and they made decisions. They made decisions to sell drugs, and receive very uniquely lengthy judgments as far as their sentencing is concerned. Uh, by God's grace and mercy, I did not make that decision. I did not make that decision. However, everything that people were doing in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
everything people were doing in the 90s, I was doing, but I didn't do that. Um, so fast forward into college, played a little football, um, did the frat guy thing, pledged the fraternity, um, went to a lot of college campuses, making myself experiencing the college experience. However, not really taking my college grades too important. I like to refer back to what my mother said when I was going through high school. She was like she only wanted me to do two things, and this was the mindset. This was at least the mindset in my house growing up. She wanted me just to do two things: graduate high school, regardless of how you graduate high school, and don't go to jail. Those were the rules.
Right.
So that's was if it was a 1.1 or a 4.0, I was getting out of high school. I was getting out of high school. So that was the guiding principle. Also, like many of us during Generation X, we many of us were raised by single parents. You
Mm-hmm.
was raised by your father. I was raised by my mother. My mother, God bless her, she had multiple sclerosis. She had other physical issues, which constrained her ability to be mobile. And that mindset, as far as I just want you to graduate, I just want you to go to jail. It wasn't really focused on. She wanted me to do good in school, but she just wanted me to get out of school because she's seen so many people in our neighborhood not make it out of school and or go to jail. So that mindset, I embraced that mindset in college, and so then I made a few other decisions in life where, as you may, had long term effects on my current life in which I'm living now, which some were positive and some were negative. But I made those decisions, and I'm here today.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting is what you said. You're around the element, and you made it past that element in order to get to college. You lived your life, and you honored your mom's wishes. Some of it is, like you said, by the grace and mercy of God. But now here you are in college. You're doing your frat thing. You're beyond your adolescent years. What was next for your life? What led you to the next phase of your life, and what was it like in that next phase?
Or it's funny. While in college, and many people ask me this question because another fun fact about me is that I spent 26 years in the military,
26.
and so yeah, and that's not just something you stumble on. Well, I stumbled on that because usually when people spend that much time in the military, oh, by the way, as an officer, so usually when someone stays in the military that long, they possibly may have gone to a military academy. They come from a family that, or they have military members in their family. I had none of that. I did not go. I couldn't. I couldn't tell you where West Point is at, or the Citadel, or VMI. I couldn't tell you where any of those schools are at then, and I couldn't tell you where they're at now. Okay, those are the military academies. So I could not tell you where they're at. I did not have a rich military background in my family. I believe my grandfather served in the military back in World War II. But that's all I know. That's all I knew about the military. And somehow I got in the military. Now, the question is, well, Larry, you spent 26 years in the military. How'd you even, what was your first step in getting there? I clearly don't know. I'm honestly saying I don't know. I don't know how, the first step. However, this is the story that I will tell. This is the story that I will tell because it's close to reality. One day, I was walking past the ROTC building at my college, and a guy by the name of then Master Sergeant James D. Rudolph. James D. Rudolph stood about 6'2", about 152 pounds, lean, very brown skin, dark skin, bald head, chain smoker, looked like our dear brother, Louis Gossip Jr., who just departed today.
Mm.
May God have mercy on him and his family. Uh, Look, a spitting image of Louis Gossip Jr. and acted like Louis Gossip Jr. in The Officer and the Gentleman. Yes, smoking his cigarettes, just harassing people as they walk by. Now, smoking cigarettes is a taboo nowadays in any environment, but
Right.
especially on a college campus outside the ROTC department, which I'm sure he was in violation of some regulation. But Master Sergeant Rudolph, I believe, challenged me because I was on the football team, challenged me to a push-up or sit-up competition. And I believe this is what I recollect. I believe he and I did that. And he did push up the conditions of the competition was if he wins, this 158-pound man that stood about 6'2", and me about 6'2", 6'1", about 225 pounds, do a push-up contest against this guy. I would have to enroll in ROTC for a semester. For a semester, just to get some some military science studies. And also he said, I'll guarantee you an A. I'll get you an A. It was a 1 credit class. So, and I kind of needed grades. Like I told you,
Right.
I was kind of happy in school. So I didn't
You're
actually,
doing your college thing. That's what you
I
said.
was doing the college thing, man. A lot of people will speak about those things that I did in college. That's in another that's another podcast altogether.
Another episode.
Yes, sir. So as fate will have it, James D. Rudolph, Sergeant Major Rudolph, then Master Sergeant Rudolph, uh, filleted me in doing push-ups and sit-ups. I mean, to the point where it was embarrassing that I had to comply. I had to comply, and I went into one class, and then one class turned into two classes, and then two classes turned into three classes, and before I knew it, I was down at what they call Fort Liberty now. Fort Liberty was called Fort Bragg at the time. In the early 90s. Again, now I was just taking classes to the point where I'm at Camp Liberty, Fort Liberty, going through what they call the advanced camp to get commissioned in the United States Army. And I'm saying to myself, this is not my thing. This was never my thing, but how fate would have it, I did extremely well. I did extremely well. Matter of fact, one day we need to have James D. Rudolph on this to let him tell his side of the story because I
That'd be
tell you,
nice.
it'll be hilarious, man. But that's how I found myself. The initial steps of coming in the military. Uh, when I first came in the military, I was a second lieutenant in military intelligence, and then um, at Fort Bragg, saw these guys walking around with green berets on, and I was assigned to a special forces unit, which are the Green Berets. And I said to myself one day, what makes them better than me? So I went out to went for their selection process, which is a grueling 21-day physical and mental event, little to no sleep, and you would go through this process, and made it through that process. Then went on through special forces training, and 20 years later, I retired as a colonel in special forces from the Special Operations Command in Tampa, Florida.
Nice, nice. So you had a long military life, tons of experiences, kind of backed your way into it, or push up your way into it, one or the other. But share with us, you hear stories about military. What a good story and a bad that you learned while serving?
Well, a good thing that I learned was leadership through adverse conditions. I found myself in several adverse conditions, rough conditions, life threatening conditions. All the events that took place from 2000 to 2020 in 2020, I was involved with.
Okay.
So you speak about the Afghanistans, you think about the Iraqs, I was there. Um, I'm not a war hog or anything like that. It was my job to go out there and perform my duty and to lead people in these environments is nothing that you should take lightly, because you have lives at stake, and people have trusted their lives in your hands. So going through those experiences and learning how to lead when you're tired, when you're hungry, but when things are not going your way, that was definitely a good aspect of the military. However, some challenging areas. The military is a microcosm of the United States, of the world, and you have everything that you have in the world. You have in that. You have overt racism. You have discrete racism. You have what they call sexual military trauma,
Mhm.
rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment. So the things that some may believe that the military don't do those things or not involved in those things. Um, no, it's a microcosm of life. One bad thing towards the end, and I experienced this. So towards the end of my career, I was involved in a unique situation, which created a Great Depression on me. Was in action. I was involved in an investigation, and it facilitated a Great Depression. However, what I've learned in my life was how do you take um, a conflict, or how do you take uh, situations which may not go your way, or the situation is totally against you, and change that and turn that situation into opportunities. That's what I found myself. So I learned to take bad situations that I found in the military, and kind of try to find the opportunity. It's like in a prize fight. When guys are boxing, one guy may be getting the light speed out of them, and there may be one opportunity that presents itself. And how do you seize the moment to exploit that situation and to be the winner, to be the victor? And I gotta say, I had the opportunity of doing that because the situation that I was involved with had me very depressed, very angry, to a point where if I didn't do something with my energy, I probably would not be on this webcast today because it was like a time bomb. So I thank God for allowing me to find opportunities to put that energy to facilitate the decompression of one area of my life and actually surging that pressure into other areas of my life.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talked about that because we're going to go into the next part of your life and your post-military aspirations. But before we do, we need you all to like, share, and subscribe. Engage this podcast because as you're hearing our stories, you're hearing the road to redemption that we have taken. And so we're going to explore more this road to redemption on our Inside Out podcast. So please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification button. So we talk about your military. You have this moment where depression was about to just take over your world, and then you make this shift. How does that shift lead into your post-military aspirations?
Yeah, well, that shift, again, I said I took that energy and channeled it into someplace else. Again, to the point where I was very on edge. I was borderline violent, physically violent, psychologically violent to everybody that I engaged, because I wasn't dealing with the situation well. And I remember where I was working at, one of the executive assistants, she was going through a PhD program, and she knew my background, she knew what I was dealing with, and she said, you need to take all that you're dealing with and go, maybe take a class or two, maybe take a class or two. So I did that. I said, what can it hurt? What can it hurt? So I enrolled. I enrolled in Nova Southeastern's conflict resolution. They had a certification program. Maybe I think it was like maybe a 6 week program or a semester long, or maybe a year. I'm not sure. But as anybody that has been out of school for some time, I was a little bit intimidated, like some of you, going back to school after 10, 15 years, whatever the case may be, and sitting down in a postgraduate course, um, taking, writing academically and so forth. Now, before that, I attended Monterey's Naval Postgraduate School, and I got a master's out of that school. Then after that, some years later, I was offered the privilege of attending the United States Army War College, where I got another master's out of that school. But sometimes it's a military academy, so no diss to the military's academy, no diss, no shade. We have some of the brightest individuals that have graduated from uh, the military institutions as undergraduates and at postgraduate work. So no diss, no shade. However, this is the first time that I was in a classroom with real citizens, like real civilians, opposed to we kind of know each other's background being in the military. So I was quite intimidated, to be honest with you. I was quite intimidated going into that arena with I believe some of the smartest folks discussing conflict resolution, And the reason why I took reason why I picked conflict resolution is because I spent 15, 18 years um, looking at conflict at in one way, and that was through the action way. Like, you see a problem, you put it down, or you call up, you do things to make it right within the mission. But here in this in the Nova's conflict resolution certification and later the PhD program, you learn the theory and you learn the practices of negotiation, of mediation, of how to solve problems beyond um, through kinetics or through force. So I learned that. I learned that, and that was very insightful. And I did very, very well in the certification program. And I took another step. And while I was in the certification program, I was exhausting myself. I was
Mhm.
exhausting myself um, to the point where I had no, I would come home from work and I would go right to doing schoolwork until I went to bed every night, every night, every night. So that's where that energy, that anxiety that I had, that's a lot of us that I experience under unique environments. We have this anxiety, and we have to have a place to kind of blow it off. Well, I took the opportunity to blow out that steam into first the uh, certification program, then immediately after was the PhD program, which I completed the same year in which I retired, which was 2020.
Nice, nice. So let me make sure I understand this right a little bit. We're going to back up. You have two master degrees, a PhD, a certification in conflict resolution, and now there's another opportunity comes up, which is the Morehouse School of Medicine's MAGIC program, Master's Administration and Justice Involved Care. So if you're educated, you have the education. What pushed you to the MAGIC program?
Insanity. Insanity. Who would put themselves through that again? You
Right.
know, uh, you know, as I matured from a high school student, and this is a badge of honor. This is absolutely a badge of honor that I graduated, like some of you. I graduated with a 1.9 GPA in high school, and I went to college, and I didn't do much better. I graduated college, I think, with a 2.6 or 2.4, something along those lines. But I graduated college, and as I continue to get my master's degrees in different locations and so forth, I start doing better and better and better. So it's critically important to seek education and learning from cradle to grave. Now, how did I become aware of the magic program? I was talking to a good friend of mine who she lives in Atlanta, and she mentioned about this online program at Morehouse School of Medicine. It's a first of its kind, and
Mhm.
she said she was going to go to it. And this is after I had my PhD, and I was like, well, it kind of aligns as far as the theme of conflict resolution with the magic charter as far as advocating for those that for social injustice and health inequities. So I saw the relationship. So as usual, I raised my hand, but then I turned around and I was all by myself. I thought she was going to come too. She didn't come. So I'm all by myself in this magic program. And what stuck with me, what stuck with me um, is the special forces. And I was in special forces. So the motto of special forces is the oppressor libere, to liberate the oppressed. So I embodied, I felt that I embodied, and I continue to embody that motto through my service, My focus was liberating oppressed people in communities and so forth, to the point where during my dissertation, a lot of people thought I was going to write something dealing with national security policy, or something, a conflict dealing with Russia, or one of adversarial country, or something along those lines. No, not at all. Understanding the most oppressed person on the face of the planet Earth. I wrote about her, the Black woman. I
Mm.
wrote about um, the conflict. I wrote about the challenges Black collegiate women face, some of them, disclosing sexual victimization. Now that's a departure. That's a departure. A Green Beret who first wrote his master's degree in the Naval Postgraduate School with respect to negotiating with insurgents, and this was back in, I think, 2004 or five. So that was not very receptive topic. But later on, we've seen that we do negotiate with those bodies. Then I wrote about in the war college. I wrote about how do we, at that time when I was in the war college, the big threat was ISIS or ISIL, and I talked about a possibility of defeating ISIL, not with no force, nonviolence, through cutting off their financial um, logisticals in financial chains and so forth. So to write about Black women, collegiate Black women, those who were sexually assaulted, and their reasoning for their non-disclosure was a huge departure. Was a huge departure because I felt that I spent over 20 years liberating the oppressed in countries that I can't even pronounce their names.
Mm.
However, how could I do something to benefit the people who look like me in my country? So I took that on as a personal challenge, and did exceptionally well, I think, on that study. And the study is called "A Silent Dilemma: The Challenges Black Collegiate Women Face Disclosing Sexual Victimization." So with that, I kept on, you know, progressing and advancing. So when I was offered the opportunity to seize this opportunity, I jumped on it. Also, another fun fact, I did not mention this, and this is probably a reasoning for me giving back so much. Matter of fact, I know it's a reason that I give back so much, because that's my charter. Shortly after I retired in 2020, after acquiring a PhD and so forth, about the October November timeframe, I was receiving a lot of gas. What appeared to be gas. I don't mean to gross anybody out, but that's what was happening. I felt like I had a lot of gas, and things were abnormal when I passed my bowels. So I went and got a colonoscopy, and I was diagnosed. I had stage 3C colon cancer.
Mm.
So this is after. This is after I got a clean bill. Well, what was reported to me, I had a clean bill of health, retiring at the military, felt good, felt energetic, acquired my PhD, was ready to go on with my life. Then in October, November timeframe, I was let to know that I had cancer, colon cancer.
Mm.
And I went through 12 rounds of chemotherapy. Yes, I went through 12 rounds of chemotherapy. But before that, they found the cancer in time to cut it out. So they cut a portion of my colon out, the descending portion of my colon, and took it and extracted that from my body. Then after that, because some of the cancer went into the lymph nodes, they call that adjuvant adjunct type of care or treatment to ensure that all the cancerous aspects were removed from your body. That was a living hell.
Mm.
That was a living hell, and I'm still recovering from that. But during that trial, I understood the trial because your brother and friend, as I mentioned earlier, he did things previously. He was involved in certain things that he believed he was going to be held accountable for. And this was the decision, as Terrence, as Thomas and I mentioned earlier. We all made decisions. This was a decision for me to make when I found out about cancer. Either I was going to try to tough it out and just allow, have me, beat cancer that way, or submit to the science and go through treatment. And I know for a fact the manner in which the cancer was progressing throughout my body, I probably wouldn't have survived that bout
Mm.
if I was not compliant, if I not was obedient to the science to help me. So with that, this is what compels me to do this work. This is what compelled me to get involved in this. Couple, my dear friend who lives in Atlanta, who told me about the program, and I thought was very noble. Because this is the only program in the United States that's focused on this topic. Yes, we have criminal justice. Yes, we have healthcare um, curriculums, but this is the only curriculum. This is the only program in the United States, uh, barring any college, not barring any college, that focuses on justice involved care, where the healthcare intersects with the justice system. And when you really understand this program, it actually transcends that community, and you help acquire a sensitivity to the issues that underserved communities face, and how can you advocate for them. So that's why, after getting my PhD, uh, one would appear, you're retired, you're employed, you're doing certain things. Why would you go back for that type of for that program? It's because this is my calling, like yours, Thomas. My calling uh, is to help those who can't help themselves, to speak
Mhm.
for those who can't speak for themselves. So, as we spoke about, and jokingly, we both had a starting point together, but we diverged because we made decisions. I served somewhere, and
Mhm.
you served somewhere. But based on our service, it brought us back to serving humanity. So
Right.
that's why I do what I do, and that's why I chose to go through this painful examination of acquiring another postgraduate degree in justice involved care.
That's good. It's interesting. There's a lot of things in our recap. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to just ask you real quick, with some final words that you want to leave with our audience, and some final words, and then also what impact has the Morehouse community had on your life, for up to this point.
Well, final words is, I think Thomas and I are testament to this. Where you begin ain't necessarily where you're going to end. It just ain't going. I mean, if you have the will, desire, and just pay attention to the environment, I think you could create opportunities for yourself. And then once you have that opportunity, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? Do you blame people? Do I blame my mother? Do I blame my father? Do I blame my environment for not being afforded certain things that other people in my generation were afforded? No. I personify the soundtrack of Generation X. You
Mhm.
know, and I believe Thomas, you do too, sir. I believe
Yeah.
in a very unique way, we personify the soundtrack of our generation. Very conscious, stick to it, the long way home. There are no shortcuts. And if you do take a shortcut, you're gonna be held accountable.
Hmm.
And that's what I would say as far as my closing remarks is that there is no shortcut to success. How will you define success? You got to put in the work. You got to put in the work, and it's going to be painful. You just got to suck it up and keep pushing forward. And
Yeah.
I just would say that Morehouse School of Medicine, and I said this earlier, it allowed me to acquire a greater sensitivity to the issues that marginalized communities face when uh, when there's a negative outcome of a social determinant of health that we spoke about before. When there's no access, little to no access to education, little to no access to employment, little to no access to healthcare, and your social and your physical environment is very challenging, very challenging. When you put yourself in that, when you understand those parameters and more, you acquire a greater sensitivity to help people that can't help themselves. So
Hmm.
Thomas, I thank you so very much for taking the opportunity to do this today. And I swear my story pales in comparison to your story. I just pray that my story and your story help somebody who watched both episodes and put them on the path of redemption.
Well, you know what I like to say? Everybody has a story. And just because my story has some shock value to it doesn't make my story any more important than yours. You are an influencer. You are a person that has the bumps and bruises. You just made some choices in life that are a little bit different. But at the point of what you say, when we talk about redemption, we can look at our life and we can see the similarities of growing up. We can see the choices that we made. Matter of fact, I learned a new similarity. You had a 1.9 grade point average. I finished high school, and then when I went back and graduated, I graduated with a 1.3.
Oh,
But one of the other similarities that I want everybody to know, and it's not a brag, it's just to let everybody know that you and I both graduated this Morehouse School of Medicine's magic program with a 4.0,
that's right.
both of us. And so it wasn't like it was just handed to us either. We worked for that 4.0. And so what I wanted everybody to understand is that when it comes to redemption, look at our stories. Look at what we're sharing with you today and the podcast before, and understand that we are here living this life truthfully and not saying, hey, look at us, we did this. We're looking at the social determinants of health amongst our people and understanding that we have tools and ways to help address these social determinants of health, and we're both equipped a little bit more through the magic program. We
That's right.
both have a heartbeat for social justice. We see a need, want to meet a need. And so through this podcast, we're going to continue to meet those needs of information, inspiration, and just continue to identify the needs and the challenges we have in our community. And so again, like, subscribe, share.
Hey Thomas, listen, man. In closing, everyone and everything is a resource. And I think we are examples of that. Let me back up first before I say that.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Cotton, Thomas Cotton received the Morehouse School of Medicine's magic programs like the top researcher. See, I knew that about you. That's a fun fact about him. Okay. If you want to know anything about research, especially community-based participatory research, you speak to Thomas Cotton because he is the expert. And it's just such an honor to be your friend and to be your to just to be your friend, sir. And I appreciate you. And we're going to continue to push this arc down the road and then put all the good people on to get us to safety.
Absolutely. I feel the same way.
That's right. But with that, everyone and everything is a resource.
Yes.
It takes a network of ascension and progression to defeat a network of oppression and depression.
And we always got to remember that everybody is that resource and they have dignity and have something to offer. So as long as the person has a heartbeat, there's an opportunity for redemption.
Thank you so very much for joining us once again. And we look forward next week or next month. Or if you see us on the street, just say hello. Well, we look forward to seeing all of you again in the near future. Take care.